I always start here. Tell me the person that you were. I believe you were 30 years old when all of this happened to you. Just who you were.
Oh, back then, I was a young man. I was at the time the one of the youngest black men on my job, and I was a family man. Had never been in trouble with the law, and was doing everything I thought America required of us: work, pay taxes, and obey the laws of the land, which I was doing. And I was, I guess you could say, had worked all my life. I worked in the steel mill, which was in Indiana. That's a big time job, the steel industry. And I was driving heavy equipment, 3 children, married, doing all the things you're supposed to do.
Right, 30 years old, living your life. So this is wild to me because this could happen to anybody. You're literally at the job. There is a late night meeting at the job, and a police officer comes to this late night meeting. And before you know it, you are accused of raping a white woman who
Correct.
claims that she was assaulted by other black men. And you were randomly thrown into being a part of this crime out of nowhere. And if I have this right, it's all because you had a pair of overalls that matched one of the men that she claimed assaulted her. Is that correct? Over some overalls?
What it was is she left. I mean, the attackers left a pair of green coveralls with the victim. And
Coveralls.
those
Mhm.
coveralls were traced back to the company that I worked for. And they really couldn't say who they belonged to because there was no identifying marks that they belonged to any particular person. But the detective said it fit my size.
And what's wild is that they take you into custody. I mean, again, you're blown away. You're at the job, you're working, you don't even know anything about this crime, but they take you into custody and you're being grilled for hours and hours and hours, but you refuse to sign a confession. A lot of folks who I've spoken to, they did sign the confession because they were so distraught, and some of them were being assaulted by the investigators. But you actually refused to sign the confession, no matter what they did. Explain what happened.
Oh, yes. A matter of fact, when I stepped back, back up just a little bit, when I was on the job, uh, there was a safety meeting called, and I thought I was going to receive a safety award because I had just recently helped a guy get his arm out of a conveyor belt. So when they told me it was a safety meeting, I was excited, thinking I was getting an award. And when I go into this meeting, we sat there for a few minutes. It was knock on the door. Detectives come in, nicely dressed. I didn't know it was detectives. I thought it was representatives of the company. And when they called my name, Roosevelt Glenn, I stood up excited. Hey, that's me. I'm Glenn. Get on the ground, And I was like, what? I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. And I ended up being arrested. Went to the police station, and at hours of interrogation, they told me finally that the coveralls matched my size, and because I was the youngest at the time, that signing a confession and working with them would probably get me no jail time if I would work with the police officers, and I refused.
And I mean, what made you refuse? Because again, I know so many people, they're so pressured, they're so broke down. What made you say, you know what, no matter what you do, I will not sign this confession?
Yeah, I think it had to do with the way I was brought up because we had to, take our punishments when we do stuff. And we was always told if you didn't do it, don't admit you done it. And I guess that instinct kicked in. And when they was interrogating me, with the fingers in the face and threatening harm to me, using the N word and stuff like that, I just looked at them and told them I wouldn't sign it. I would never admit to raping a woman, I've never even met. For work, first of all, and I wouldn't admit to any crime I didn't do.
And you said when they were taking you to a city jail, as you're in the car, they said, "Shut up, N word," as you were saying, "Where am I going? What's happening?" Right?
Right. That was
Hmm.
after the initial arrest. And I was confused because after I realized it wasn't a joke, and I seen all these squad cars in the parking lot of the steel mill, I began to ask them, hey, what am I supposed to done? Because at that time I knew it wasn't a joke. You know, I wasn't crazy. I knew that wasn't a joke. Anyway, they told me to shut up, N word, and you'll find out. We got you. Your run is over. And
Wow.
we just back and forth. So when they said that, I really got quiet.
I got to ask you this. You are a young man. It's the early 90s. You're in Indiana. What are you thinking? Because you know the history when you are being accused of raping a white woman. What's going through your mind when that's the accusation as a young black man in Indiana?
Oh, I thought I'd be killed, to being
Wow.
honest with you. I didn't think I would make it through this ordeal, especially going to penitentiary. Well, at that time, it was just the county jail, because those type of crimes are really looked down upon. And I had never been in that predicament before. And being that it was all over the television, I knew before I even got there, everybody knew what I was there for. So it was a frightening experience going into the county jail. And even after the conviction, knowing I was headed to prison, it really struck a lot of fear in me because I didn't know what to expect. When you don't know what to expect, you're going to always be afraid. you know. So all I knew about was the stories I heard.
So here's a wild thing for those out there listening. You sit in county jail for 4 months. DNA evidence comes out. The judge releases you because the DNA doesn't link you to the crime. So you're out.
Correct.
But then you go back in because some people in the jail said, "Oh, he confessed to me. He confessed." I guess they call them snitches, right? But
Correct.
literally, DNA doesn't link you to the crime. You're out of jail. You're thinking it's all over. You're living your life. Then you go back in. Explain to us how they get you back in.
Yeah, that was really uh, when we was in the county jail. It was like the fourth month. Uh, it was an emergency hearing. They called me back down to the courtroom, and that's all my family was in there. The attorneys was in there, and the attorney said, "You ready to go home?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on?" He said, "Well, the DNA didn't link you to the crime, and the judge is going to release you." I said, "Well, I know it. It wouldn't link me to the crime. I didn't do it." So at that time, when the judge released us, I went back to work because I had my family put in a leave of absence, and so I was able to go back to work after 4 months of being locked up. And after what was it, another about 60 days, I was home, and one day I was at home eating, and I got a call from my attorney saying that, hey, you're going to be tried. And I said, tried? I said, DNA didn't link me to the crime. He said, well, two jailhouse snitches said you confessed while you was in the county jail. And now the Indiana laboratory says that they found the hair on the victim's sweater, and it matches 26 characteristics of your hair.
Mm. And didn't they go to the victim and they took they took your photos to the victim's house and they said that you were one of the guys who did this. They said that to the victim. Is that accurate?
All right, they told the victim, they took pictures of several of us because it's supposed to be 5 men committed this crime. So they took the photos of the guys they arrested to the victim's house and said, these are the men who attacked you. These are the men who raped you. And and I don't know why they done that because the victim, she couldn't identify any of her attackers because she said that those green coveralls they left, they blindfolded. So the detective taking these pictures to her home, I believe, is just so she can get familiar with our faces.
So you are going to you're going to go to trial. You're obviously scared. You know that you are a young black man accused of raping a white woman. You know there's no DNA evidence linking you to the crime, but you already see what they're trying to do. So I can imagine that you're terrified. I heard you say in another interview, Mr. Glenn, you said that you were considering running. You were considering leaving the country and running, and your uncle told you, "No, stay, fight this because you're innocent. You could fight this." But I do want to ask you, do you wish that you would have ran in retrospect? Do you wish you would have just ran and went to a different part of the world?
Now, no. But when I first was convicted and went to the prison, I thought, man, I should have ran. I should have just hit
Mm.
because when the first guy was convicted and I knew he hadn't done anything, that set off all my alarms. Well, I'm next. So, yes, when I first got convicted, I thought I should have ran. But after going through this whole ordeal and today, I'm glad I didn't run.
All right, so tell us about this trial, because I believe you have two trials, right? The first
Correct.
trial results in a hung jury, and you had a pretty good lawyer with your first trial, but the second trial, everything falls apart. Tell us about this trial.
Yeah, in the second trial, it was basically the same as the first. Uh, the only difference was they added the uh, Indiana laboratory testimony that stated that I could is almost impossible that the hair could have come from anyone other than me. That's what the expert was allowed to tell the jury, and they also added they had two snitches, but now they had three that said I'd done it. Now they had another guy. He had trouble in his life about something, and now he was able to put me in the vehicle. He was their way of putting me in this vehicle. They were supposed to have committed the crime with his testimony, along with the other two guys who said I confessed. And now the Indiana laboratory is saying the hair is unlikely it could have come from anyone else other than Glenn. Uh, and that's what they fed the jury, and this was the result, the conviction.
Did the victim testify?
Yes, the victim did testify, and she did an in-court identification of me, saying he was a black man with a round face, and she said, and they asked her, "Is that person in the courtroom?" And she pointed at me. That's him right there. And my attorney, of course,
Wow,
objected because I had never been identified, and so
wow.
they had to strike that, but the jury already heard it because my attorney began to argue that several men in the courtroom had round faces and was black. So you can't. That's not a way of identifying someone. But
You know, what's really sad, this happens in 93, that if this would have been 30 years before, you probably would have got pulled out of the courtroom and hung by a tree. Like, that's how dangerous and crazy this is to me. But they found another way to take your freedom away. I mean, this is what happened to thousands of black men in the North and the South. They were accused of raping a white woman with no evidence whatsoever. Um, it's just wild to me. It's wild
yeah,
to me.
it's sad. It's really sad on how they took me, and I watched it unfold. Uh, how they just changed who I was. They made me out of
Mm.
a monster. And I'm sitting in court, never been in trouble. And I'm sitting in the courtroom, wow, could they really do this? And they did. And I couldn't believe it. When I finally went to the prison, I was just so, I was in a state of shock. When they said guilty, I'll even bag up. When they said guilty, they charged me with rape, robbery, deviant conduct, and they only found me guilty of rape. The other two I wasn't guilty of, the other two charges. And when they said guilty of rape, it's like I went off into a fog. It's like everything was just, I couldn't hear nothing until all of a sudden I heard the scream of my mother. I heard her cry. When I heard her cry, that's when I believe I came to. And I looked around and told her everything would be all right. Her and my family, they were sitting behind me. And I said, it's going to be all right. I was trying to show strength for them because they were really distraught.
So, in this unjust trial, you were sentenced to 36 years. You go to prison. And I heard you say in an interview that you've, just talking about life in prison, that you've been through hell and you stare death in the eyes in prison. Uh, I think it's important for people to know that prison is not like what you see on CSI or whatever. Uh, Explain what that was, staring death in the eyes in prison.
Oh yes, in prison, you face every day, you face the possibility of death. It's just death all around you. It's like it's the norm. You see people. It's been times I had to walk around people who were badly beaten, or I had to step over. I had to ignore people being assaulted because some men in there believed that I was innocent, and because I wasn't affiliated with any gangs or anything like that, they told me to stay away from stuff, stay out of stuff, and I had a few arguments myself, which could have led to my death, but some people intervened in my behalf. And going through that stress like that, I became suicidal at one point. And staring death in the eyes, being suicidal, I lost my self-esteem. I began to become hopeless. I just wanted to give up because I figure if I had to go through this, I'd rather be dead than to go through this. But then I put my faith in God, and I believe that's when I began to have the strength to endure and persevere because I made it through the 17. I call it 17 years because it was 16 years, 8 months, 5 days, and 12 hours. And I think that strength, when I called upon God, I believe that strength helped me get through it all those thoughts I had of ending my own life and so on and so forth. I never did it. I never attempted it, but it was a thought process. And thankfully, I didn't.
How was your family, your mother, affected by you going behind bars?
The hardest thing was seeing her because her and my sister and my ex-wife and my daughter, they would come every 2 weeks for the entire time I was locked up. And every time I see her, I could see the sadness in her eyes, even though she tried to keep a smile. I could see how I was eating at her. Uh, and she prayed really hard for me. She prayed so much. She just prayed the hope. She prayed that she hoped to see the day that I got out of prison. And she prayed to hope to see the day that my name was clear. And she got it. And I was finally exonerated. I got out in 2009, and she was there for my release. And I was exonerated in 2017, and she was there when I was exonerated, January 28th, 2017, and she died July 28th, 2017.
Wow. And you're eventually exonerated because you had some great people fighting for you. You had your sister fighting for you. You had a professor named Fram Watson fighting for you who looked at your case and just realized how insane it was. And then there is some advanced technology, advanced DNA technology that basically exonerates you again because, again, the first DNA back in the 90s said that you had nothing to do with the crime. But this advanced DNA just shows you had nothing to do with the crime whatsoever. And you're released, like you said, in 2009 after 16 years. Uh, I got to ask you this, how do you get through the trauma? How do you get through the PTSD? You were a family man, you were a hardworking guy, and now 16 years later, you're out, but people think you're out, you're free. Indiana offers no compensation, which is insane. Every single state should be offering compensation when you put somebody in bondage and take their freedom away in this way. But explain to us just getting through being back into this world and the trauma of being behind bars that long.
I had made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to let it destroy me. And I didn't want to take the prison mentality to my home. I didn't want my family to be scared or leery about being around me. So I wanted to try my best to be the same person I was before I went to prison, and even better. And my focus became on in the spiritual world. I really held on to God, belief and faith in God, And doing that, it still is not easy. That doesn't get you there because I still had nights where I couldn't rest. I still go through flashbacks now, just remembering certain things that happened in the penitentiary. I remember getting out, trying to move on with my life. I passed mostly all the tests on jobs, physicals, physical tests, written tests, and I wouldn't get called back after they done a background check. Because when I got out, I was on parole. I wasn't exonerated.
And wait a minute, sir. I'm sorry not to cut you off, but originally when you get out, like you said, you're parole, but they made you register as a sex offender, and that
Correct.
doesn't go away until you are exonerated years later. So you're registered as a sex offender, and one can only imagine how it's hard to get work and live a life with that on your record, right?
Oh yeah, that's very hard because not only was I released on parole, I had to register, like you said, as a sexual violent predator, and I also had to attend therapeutic classes for rapists, child molesters, and incest. And this went on for 1 year after my release, and then the parole uh, and the classes ended, and then for the next 7 years after that, I had to still register as a sex offender, and I also had to report to the county. I think it was once a month. No, I think it was every 3 months. I report to the county, had to retake snapshots, strip, go through all that again. And then when I finally got a job in another county, I'm from Lake County, I got a job in Porter County. Then I had to report to two counties. I had to report to Lake County and Porter County Sheriff's Office just to come to that county. So it was really hard being out here uh, considered a sexual violent predator when you've never done anything.
And again, DNA evidence in the 90s said that you weren't linked to the crime. That just blows my mind. I do want to ask you this though. Obviously there's so much discussed of the prosecutors. They were heinous. They obviously they convinced people who were behind bars to lie about you and do this snitching, which was clearly a lie. But I do want to know, how do you feel about the victim who pointed you out in court? I don't know if her attackers were ever, arrested, but how do you feel about her?
Personally, I used to feel sorry for her because she went through a traumatic experience. I can imagine, because I have all women in my family. And so I know my girl, I got two girls, and I know that it was horrible what happened to her because when I read the story, I was like, wow, that was brutal what they done to her. And uh, I had to forgive her in my own mind because I felt she was misinformed. I believe
Mm,
she was led down a road of wrong, I think when they convinced her that we were the one by showing her our pictures and stuff like that, that's all she had to hold on to was these were the guys because she was told that. So I hold no hard feelings against her or animosity because she was lied to. So it's like she was a victim and now I'm a victim. It's like we were two victims in this whole situation.
yeah, this system, these prosecutors make these massive intentional mistakes. They don't pay for it. They ruin lives of victims. They create victims. It's very disturbing. What are you doing now? Where are you now with your life? It's been again, you were released on probation in 2009, but you're exonerated years later. But where are you now?
Now I'm just sitting back. Fortunately, when I was released, I was also, I guess you could say, I ain't gonna say charged, but I was held responsible for like 15 years of real child support. And the mayor of Gary,
Really?
yeah, yeah, they was talking about rearresting me, but
What?
the mayor of Gary, her name was Karen Freeman Wilson. She gave me a job for the city, and fortunately, I was able to pay all that off. And I worked there just until this year. I just stopped working this year. I just, 59, I'm gonna be 60. I would have been retired at 59, so I resigned at 59, and I'm just sitting back, relaxing, and I'm telling my story and trying to be a voice for those that are still incarcerated. Because when I was there, I used to pray and cry a lot, wishing that people would hear my voice or someone would speak for me. And now I feel I'm that person that I was praying for. And there are people I believe that are sitting there right now praying and asking anyone to just be a voice for them. And so I continue to do what I'm doing now, like being on your show or any chance I get to shine a light on injustice. If just use my story, if that would help.
Mr. Glenn, I'm just floored that you had to pay child support when you were behind bars for 16 years. That's whoa, that I never knew that. I learned something today. I didn't know that happens. You behind bars. Wow,
Oh
that's
yeah, don't
wild.
start. I got the letter before I left prison.
And they were going to put you behind bars again for that. Whoa, this
Yeah,
system is this system
that's
is
bad.
it's demonic through and through.
And I like to
You have a
correct.
book. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I like to correct one thing about Indiana. Now, they just this year started compensation.
Oh, okay. Well, they should do it
And
retroactively for you. they should. They
that's
should.
what they said they was going to do it because they some advocates out of New York had me come and testify to the Senate, and they say they was going to make it so I could apply. They don't just give it to you now. You have to apply and have another hearing. And I filed a lawsuit, which that's been pending since 2018. And those chances are, you have to prove that they intentionally done something wrong. So what Indiana has told me is either I drop the lawsuit and apply, or keep the lawsuit. So I got a decision to make by the end of the year, which way I'm gonna go.
And I do want to point out there was another person who was wrongfully accused as well, and he has been exonerated. Daryl Pinkins, right? He's been exonerated as well,
Oh
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So there was
he was still in prison, and
yeah.
that's what the fight was really. Uh, I guess you could say it was aimed at because Professor Watson, who worked fought for both of us, we were both her clients. She continued to fight even when I was out. We would still talk. We would still meet like once a year. And the students that worked on my case, they became lawyers themselves. All
Mm,
became good associates, and we would meet every year and discuss things. And she kept fighting. That's how she found this Dr. Perlin out of Pittsburgh. He was a scientist who had created this technology and called True Leo. And even though we had through other laboratories, they said we were not included because our genetic markers wasn't there. That wasn't enough for the state of Indiana. So this scientist, he was able to read and analyze all the evidence. Indiana gave him permission, and he was able to find all 5 perpetrators in the DNA. And there was none of the people they arrested or locked up.
mm, wow.
And
And
3
you have
of
a
them,
book out as well too. I'm sorry, you have a book out,
yes, I have a book out called Innocent Nightmare.
Innocent Nightmare. And can folks where can folks purchase it on Amazon?
Yes, sir. It's on Amazon.
Innocent Nightmare on Amazon by Roosevelt Glenn. Well, listen, if folks want to support you, if they want to help out in any capacity, they can donate to your Cash App, which is $Roosevelt, spelled like the president, T Glenn. That's ROOS, ROOSEVELT, T Glenn with 2 N's. And they can support. I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much, sir. Is there a way that folks can follow you and you follow your work?
Oh yes, I have 2 pages. I have an Innocent Nightmare uh, Facebook page, and I have a Roosevelt Glenn Senior Facebook page. And on those pages are a lot of videos and different events that I have done throughout this state and a few other places. And also, I'm a part of a movement that is trying to correct these different states and get compensation in all the states. We have come together and we're trying to go to every state and make sure compensation is there for those once they find out they shouldn't have been in prison. Because, like I said, I lost my pension and everything. 401k, I lost it all. So right now I'm scraping, but I'm keeping my head above water.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that people can donate. I know it's rough times right now in this economy, but if you can, it's dollar sign Roosevelt T. Glenn. I want to thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You have a good day. Be safe.
All right, thank you for all you do. We,
Absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
appreciate people like you who even have an interest in just telling these stories.
It is crucial. I'm so happy I have the platform to do it.